It all started on a calm Sunday morning, the kind where the birds chirped louder than the cars, and the only thing on my to-do list was to finish unpacking. I had just moved into what I thought was my dream property, 10 wide open acres of land. No neighbors in sight, and most importantly, absolutely no HOA to breathe down my neck about what color mailbox I should have. It was a peaceful escape from the city and its endless rules. Everything was perfect until she showed up. A sharp knock on the door startled me. I opened it to see a woman standing there with a clipboard, sunglasses on, and the kind of expression that instantly told me I was about to have a bad time. "I'm Karen, president of the Cedar Hills HOA," she said, without even offering a hello. "We've noticed you haven't registered your property with the association." I was confused. "Not in your HOA. My property's outside." "Cedar Hills." She gave me a tight, sarcastic smile and tapped her clipboard. "That may have been true before, but our HOA expanded last year. Your property now falls under our jurisdiction. You're required to pay dues and follow community guidelines." I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. I had researched everything before buying this property: county maps, zoning info, even spoke with a lawyer. There was no mention of any HOA, especially not Cedar Hills. "There must be some mistake," I told her. "My land isn't part of any HOA. I verified that before closing." She scoffed.
No.
"Then I suggest you speak to a lawyer, because if you refuse to comply, we'll be forced to take legal action." And just like that, she turned around and left, leaving me stunned on my own front porch. I didn't know it then, but that 5-minute conversation would set off a chain of events that would expose her lies, take down her little empire, and prove that sometimes standing your ground really does pay off. Asterisk, a week later, I came home from work to find a thick envelope taped to my front door. It was from a law office representing the Cedar Hills HOA. My stomach dropped as I opened it and read through the papers. Karen had actually gone through with her threat. She was suing me. The claims were ridiculous: violating community standards, failing to register with the HOA, refusing to pay dues, and even making unauthorized modifications to the property. The so-called modifications: a small tool shed I built for my gardening equipment and a wooden swing set I set up for my kids. She wanted over $5,000 in fines and demanded that I repaint my house in approved earth tones, move the shed, and submit any future plans to the HOA Architectural Committee for approval. The kicker? My land wasn't even within her HOA's boundaries. I knew she had no legal standing, but now I needed to prove it. I called the real estate lawyer who had helped with my property purchase and scheduled a meeting. When I arrived at his office, I brought every piece of documentation I had: property surveys, purchase contracts, satellite images, even the original zoning approvals. We combed through every document, and my lawyer quickly spotted something important. The HOA had filed an application to expand their boundaries a year earlier, just like Karen claimed, but the county zoning board had rejected it due to incomplete paperwork and a lack of community vote. Legally, the expansion never happened. Karen was bluffing. My land was not, and never had been, under their jurisdiction. Her lawsuit had no basis. Armed with this information, my lawyer drafted a formal response to the court, attaching all the legal evidence showing my property was completely independent. He also requested that the case be dismissed immediately and warned that we'd pursue legal action for harassment if this continued. I suddenly felt a surge of confidence. Karen had clearly counted on fear and intimidation to make me cave, but now the truth was on my side, and we were ready to shut her down. Asterisk, the courtroom was small, quiet, and tense. I sat at the defendant's table with my lawyer, watching as Karen walked in like she owned the place. Dressed in a sharp navy blazer, hair tightly pulled back, and carrying a stack of organized documents. She looked like she was about to give a TED Talk rather than argue a petty lawsuit. She didn't even glance in my direction. Her confidence was almost impressive until it all came crashing down. The judge entered, took his seat, and asked both parties to begin. Karen stood up immediately, cleared her throat, and launched into a dramatic speech about community values, rule enforcement, how my non-compliance threatened the integrity of the neighborhood. She went on about how I had refused to pay HOA dues, violated landscaping policies, and ignored repeated warnings. She was halfway through a sentence about mandatory paint color regulations when the judge raised his hand to stop her. My lawyer calmly stood up, approached the bench, and handed over a single-page document, a certified zoning map signed by the county clerk, clearly outlining the Cedar Hills HOA boundaries. My property was more than a mile outside of it. Judge studied it for a moment, then looked back at Karen. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "you're claiming authority over land that is not within your HOA's jurisdiction. This document proves that. The court sees no legal basis for this claim. Case dismissed with prejudice." You could have heard a pin drop. Karen's face turned from smug to pale in seconds. She tried to speak, but the judge cut her off. "Dismissed means dismissed, ma'am. You're done here." He banged the gavel, and just like that, it was over. 5 minutes. That's all it took to destroy her whole plan. I turned to my lawyer, and we both smiled. I couldn't believe how quickly justice had been served. Karen stormed out of the courtroom without saying a word, her stack of papers clutched to her chest like a life vest. But it wouldn't save her from what was coming next. Asterisk.
Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Karen didn't just make a mistake. She had crossed a serious line. She trespassed onto my property multiple times, intimidated my family, and filed a completely baseless lawsuit, wasting my time, money, and energy. And she wasn't just targeting me. During the whole process, I had spoken to a few neighbors in the area and discovered that several of them had also been pressured by Karen into believing they were suddenly part of the HOA. Some had already started paying dues out of fear, and others were too nervous to speak out. That's when I knew I couldn't just let it go. The restraining order was my first step. I filed for a no contact and no trespass order against Karen, and the judge approved it within a few days. And now, if she so much as stepped on my driveway or sent me another notice, she'd be in violation and subject to arrest. Then, I reported the entire HOA board to the county zoning office. I compiled every interaction, every letter, and even court transcripts showing how they had knowingly filed false claims and tried to impose rules on land they didn't control. The zoning board launched an investigation almost immediately, and that's when things really started to unravel for Karen. It turned out that she had been acting behind the scenes, telling other board members she had permission to expand the HOA boundaries when she didn't. She never got the necessary votes, never filed the correct paperwork, and had lied about the county's approval. Basically, she had been operating on pure fiction and bullying people into going along with it. The county issued multiple fines against the HOA and declared their boundary claims invalid. They also required them to issue public letters to all affected homeowners stating that no expansion had taken place and that anyone outside the legal boundary was not subject to HOA rules. The board was furious. Karen had embarrassed them all and dragged the entire association into a legal and financial mess. Her reign was over and her carefully built image of power crumbled in public view. It was no longer just a personal victory. It was a win for the entire neighborhood. After everything was said and done, Karen disappeared almost overnight. No more clipboard walks, no more random inspections, no more HOA letters taped to my door. The restraining order made sure of that, but her reputation was so badly damaged, she didn't even show up to the next HOA meeting. Within a month, she was officially voted out as president by the remaining board members. It wasn't even close. They wanted nothing more to do with her after the legal nightmare she caused. As for the HOA itself, the county put strict conditions on them. They were permanently banned from attempting any boundary expansions without full public hearings and notarized consent from all affected landowners. In other words, they'd never be able to pull the same stunt again. I decided to make things crystal clear for anyone still confused. Right at the entrance of my driveway, I posted a large bold sign that read, "A private property not under HOA jurisdiction trespassers will be prosecuted." It wasn't just a warning, it was a statement. My land, my rights, no more games. Since then, life has gone back to the peaceful, quiet rhythm I had always imagined when I bought the place. My kids play outside on the swing set without fear of someone yelling at them for noise violations. My garden shed still stands exactly where I built it. No permission slips needed. I can paint my house any color I want, build what I want, and live how I want, all without the constant shadow of someone trying to control me. But perhaps the most satisfying part of it all was hearing from neighbors who had been in similar situations. A few of them told me they had been scared to speak up until they saw how I stood my ground and fought back. Some had even started challenging their own HOA problems after learning what really happened. In the end, what started as a stressful battle with a power-hungry woman turned into a lesson in standing up for what's right. All it took was 5 minutes in court and the courage to push back. And now, Karen's gone for good, the HOA knows its place, and I finally have the freedom I moved here for.